Hey, let's talk a little bit about Michigan. We got a what if from my guy Rick. He says, what if Michigan has a legit quarterback in 2024? That is, again, Rick's what if that he believes could and will shape the college football season this upcoming year. What would that look like? Because you got Davis Warren, you got Alex Orji, who are probably making the most headlines when it comes to competing for this job. Jack Tuttle, you're hearing rumblings of him maybe making a go at this job. What would that look like to be legit for Michigan? We'll talk about it right now, but if you're a Michigan fan, you're a college football fan, period, hey, welcome. If you're listening on podcast, arms are wide open, outstretched here, no creed. We're glad to have y'all. This is college football, nothing but college football every single day of the year, live 3 times a week as we are right now. If you're more of a podcast person, no sweat. We got full hour-long episodes for you on the podcast platforms. You type in the hard count with JD Pickell. You go to Apple, you go to Spotify. We got you covered all year round, okay? So lock it in there. Rate and review as well. Please and thank you. We appreciate you for that. So going back to the question here, what would it look like for legit quarterback play at Michigan? To me, legit doesn't need to look like throwing for 300 yards, doesn't need to look like winning the Heisman Trophy. I think legit at Michigan, with how this roster is built and how they're going to play this upcoming season, is built like doing what's needed. Meeting what's, and doesn't sound great on a t-shirt. It's not going to, make people click on a thumbnail. But what was J.J. McCarthy last year? And I understand he was sitting for a lot of those games the first half of the season, but he wasn't throwing for over 300 yards every game. In fact, a lot of their biggest games, he was handing the ball off, making plays with his legs, efficient throwing the ball downfield, but he wasn't lighting it up every single Saturday. He made good decisions. He helped move the ball downfield. Unselfish. That was what they needed last year. And I think a lot of folks, especially in Ann Arbor, would say, yeah, J.J. McCarthy last year for us was legit. And the recipe and identity of Michigan in 2024, it's not massively changing. Just because you brought in a new head coach, he's not looking at the recipe and saying, all right, you know what worked last year? That's great. Tear it all down, but down to the studs. I want us to go and air raid. No, it's still going to be bully ball. It's still going to be a 60% of the time run the football kind of team. It's still going to be play great defense. That's going to be Michigan. And so I think, to me, what legit would look like in 2024 at the quarterback position is being the difference maker in games where the roster talent is a little bit more even. Like the Texas game, perfect example. They're going to have a great roster. They're going to be out to prove something. They're going to your place early in the year. Big noon, Gus Johnson on the call. It's going to be a lot of fun for us as college football consumers. Can the quarterback be the difference maker situationally on 3rd and 2? It's man coverage across the board. You're Davis Warren, you're Alex Orji. Everybody's covered. What are you doing? Can you scramble and pick up that 6 yards for us to keep the drive alive and keep us going? That's not going to jump out on the box score. But can you do what's needed? Can you be the difference maker in situations where it's going to be a stalemate from a roster talent level? Ohio State game could also be an example of that. USC could be an example of that, depending on what USC does. Can you make the play? Whether it's set up, we got play action, deep shot downfield, or whether it's ad-lib, as I just mentioned, that I think is going to be what's needed for Michigan in 2024. Because I think the emphasis on the quarterback being able to be more of a catalyst this year and being that playmaker is going to be shown, because I don't know that you have as much at the wide receiver position as you had last year. Not saying you won't, but I'm just saying right now we know a lot less about that group. I think it's fair to say. There's no Roman Wilson. There's no Cornelius Johnson. They're looking for some young guys to emerge. And so while that's all happening, you may need Alex Orji to run for 100 yards against Texas to win that game. You may need Davis Warren in certain situations to be able to put on his best J.J. McCarthy impersonation, ad-lib, continue to buy time with his legs while someone opens up downfield and he throws a rocket. That might be exactly what you need. So, if they have a playmaker, or to put it more simply, an answer in games where the roster talent is more equal, what does that mean for Michigan? Well, at that point, I think Michigan's a playoff team. And we've said this many times, I think Michigan and the disrespect they're getting right now in the college football world is a little bit wild, if you ask us, because the rest of the roster, just because we don't know as many names as we sit here right now, doesn't mean they're not going to be dudes. Say what you want about Sherrone Moore, this roster and the personnel internally at Michigan is still going to be, I believe, on the receiving end of the Jim Harbaugh development factory. Like, guys that didn't start last year, that's fine. They're going to start this year, and they're going to be really good. Why? Because they've been going through the process of developing, of buying in, of doing things Michigan's way. And we've seen now, for the better part of the last few seasons, especially last season, that pays dividends. If you stick to the script, you stick to the proven process, you will have success, you will have results. Then we already mentioned the guys that you already know, Kenneth Grant, Mason Graham, talked about them earlier in the show, Will Johnson, arguably the best corner in college football, Donovan Edwards. There's a lot of pieces here. And I think to illustrate this point, when we talk about old Michigan, when they were trying to get over the hump, when Cade McNamara was quarterback, and you make the switch, and there's some people are saying, yeah, that's obvious. You have some people saying, hey, why would you do that? Cade McNamara is a Big Ten championship winning quarterback. Why are you making that switch? J.J. McCarthy did two things for me when he was the quarterback at Michigan, in my opinion. And I think the quarterback this year will have to do that. One, he added an extra gear to the offense. So whether it was pushing the ball downfield, whether it was making plays with his legs when something wasn't there, as Joel Klatt would say, going above the X's and O's, he brought that to the table. He raised the floor of the Michigan offense, added the extra gear. The second thing he did, he tied that entire operation together. You could probably put a lot of different examples to this, what he was as a leader, what he was emotionally for that team. I think, again, as a playmaker, he brought it all together, just doing what was asked of him, whether it was, we need you to pull it on a read option on 3rd and 1 against Penn State. Whatever it was, he was able to fill in the gaps of whatever Michigan didn't have on a specific player in a specific matchup. And I think whether it's Alex Orji or Davis Warren, you will have to be able to answer that call and answer that bell if you end up being the guy. And if you do that, if you fill in the gaps and you're able to make up for situations where maybe Michigan doesn't have the advantage, or elevate where Michigan does have a roster battle back and forth from a talent perspective, that's how Michigan becomes a college football playoff team. And again, I'm not so sure that we shouldn't factor them a little bit more into that Big Ten championship kind of conversation. Big Ten feels very wide open from Ohio State to Oregon. I know Penn State in their schedule, but like Michigan, I'm just telling you now, just because there's a lot of new faces, just because it's a new head coach, that championship DNA is still there, and I think they have two good options at quarterback as we sit here in June. It's going to be a matter of who can be that playmaker, who can be the differentiator for you when it comes to crunch time. Hey y'all, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.